Hi, I'm David Brett Lavelle from North Hertfordshire College.
And I'm Anthony Gascoigne, also from North Hertfordshire College. Today we're going to make a simple mushroom risotto. There's multiple ways, different ways of making a risotto. Today I'm going to show you what I understand to be a classic Italian method. And what we're going to do with our rice, this is arborio rice. Again, there's different types of grains you can use. Probably the best grain is Carnaroli rice, which retains more absorbency. It absorbs more stock, so it gives more flavor, and it doesn't overcook as easily. But arborio is probably the rice you will work with the most. So what we're going to do with the rice during this method is we're going to pop it into a dry pan, and we're going to toast the rice.
So that's no oil, nothing, just completely dry roast.
No oil. Sometimes people will put a touch of salt in there, but it's not really necessary. All we're wanting to do is to start the cooking process of the rice. And what we're doing is getting heat through the grain. So when you feed the liquid in and it starts cooking, it cooks uniformly. It doesn't overcook. You will have an evenly cooked risotto.
Because you're toasting it like this, does it change the flavour profile at all? Does it give it a bit of
it could give it a nuttiness, but really and truly it is more about the evenness of the final cooking. Because the grain is heated through to the core, so each individual grain of rice will cook at the same rate.
That aid in consistency as well when it's the final product.
That's right. So whilst the arborio rice is toasting, we're going to start on the sofrito, and we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil to a pan. We've got some finely chopped onion and some garlic, and we've got some mushrooms as well. And we're just going to gently sweat those. Get a little bit of colour on the onions, but we're not frying here. This is a gentle cooking method here. We're just sweating, cooking with little colour.
So, I mean, we talked about doing it different ways. My take of it and how I do it is that I kind to slow cook the onions down with the garlic, releasing all those flavours, then add the arborio rice, and then start toasting it off.
Yep.
Start feeding in.
And that method is absolutely fine, and it's a method I use also. But today I'm just trying to try a different technique, which I consider to be the more authentic way of doing it.
Absolutely.
You'll find chefs like Danilo Cortellini from the Italian embassy. This is the way he produces his risottos, and who's to argue with Danilo Cortellini? So stop arguing, chef. So we're just going to let that toast. Bring the onions up to temperature just to start sweating them. I've not added the garlic yet because garlic will burn, so I'm going to add the garlic in a little bit later on.
With this whole sweating process, it's creating that sweetness with the onions as well, isn't it? Releasing those kind of acidities from there and getting the sweetness from there. So
absolutely.
That flavour base.
Yeah. Again, we're not colouring here because we don't want the bitterness. We just want that, as you say, that nice sweet softened onion. We've also got a basic chicken stock on the go here as well. What I would suggest here, if you're using mushrooms, for example, any trimmings of vegetables, we're using a convenient stock, but reinforce that convenient stock with any additional trimmings, choppings, so you're just kind of giving that more natural flavour to the stock.
Would you add aromatics? Would you add aromatics to the stock, like the thyme, or would you add it to your kind of base risotto?
Yeah, you could.
Remove it after?
Even both. Yeah. You could. So that rice is toasting nicely. We'll just sweat the heat up a little.
I can hear it toasting.
You can almost smell it a little bit as well,
yeah.
Can't you? So the onions cooking down nicely. What we're going to do in a couple of seconds, when this is fully toasted and the grains are heated, super heated all the way through without colouring, we're going to introduce some white wine. Okay. best wine to use for a risotto would be a dry white wine. Although you do find people using sparkling wines.
Yeah.
Prosecco, that kind of sparkling. Yeah, yeah. But essentially, a dry white wine is what you're after.
Just a quick question, like, do you have to add white wine per se? I mean,
No.
You're cooking for someone from an ethnic background and they couldn't have wine. Can we just add vinegar to that? Would it get the same thing?
Absolutely. You know, and I think any liquid really, it's the wine does enrich it. It does give it that little bit of flavour, but it's not essential. It's you can substitute it for sure. Okay, so you feel the grains are just, you know, like hot sand.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Right.
And you can smell it.
You can. And we are now going to go in with the white wine. So you see straight away that wine is
got all that steam, haven't you?
Is reducing down, burning the alcohol off. It's not the alcohol we want, it's the flavour of the wine. That will reduce down quite quickly.
And this is the point, like, when we're cooking, that we make sure there's no rice up on the edges or anything like that. We just want to...
That's right, everything should be in the pan. Everything should be in the pan. Whilst that's reducing, I'm just going to introduce the garlic to the onions.
At what point do we reduce the wine down to? Is it it's almost gone?
Almost gone. I mean, there's still a little bit of liquid there. It's almost, you know, till it's almost all evaporated. So you've concentrated as much of that flavour as possible.
You really intensify the flavour, didn't you?
That's right. Okay. So I'm going to bob some of the mushrooms in, and we're just going to gently cook those down as well. You could add those in almost raw towards the end of cooking for a different type of risotto, but today we want to get that flavour through, that kind of gentle cooking flavour, so we're going to just cook them in the sofrito.
Yeah, because you might, if you're doing wild mushrooms, we won't want to overcook them, we want to keep their shape, their form.
Absolutely.
Towards the end of their process.
Okay, so the wine is almost evaporated, so we're going to start feeding some chicken stock in. So a little bit of time. You only add as much as you need.
Just to cover that rice, is it?
Yeah, just to cover that rice. Every now and again, this rice will start absorbing the liquid, the stock, and we'll feed a little bit more in. And that's...
We've heated the stock up. How important is it to have the stock hot?
Absolutely.
Not adding a cold product to something hot.
Your risotto should always be cooking. If the risotto cools down, it's not cooking. So you need a hot stock to keep that cookery process going.
Yeah, we don't want that stop-start process. Adding
That's right.
A cold item, cooling it down.
It's a non-stop process. Okay, so the sofrito's cooking, the onions, the garlic, the mushrooms, we're just going to let that cook down. I've got my stock ready here, and we're just going to cook this rice out. After the rice is half cooked, we're going to add the sofrito, and we'll come back in a minute and do that. Right, okay, so we've been feeding the stock into the rice for about the last 5 minutes or so. And what we're going to do now is, now the rice is roughly about halfway cooked, we're going to add the cooked sofrito to the rice. Now we'll start introducing all those further flavours.
What we're really doing here is it's like building layers of flavours. So it's got that depth, not just in texture but in flavour as well.
That's right, that's right. And again, we're just going to keep monitoring this. We're going to keep feeding in a little bit of stock when required, and we're just going to let this cook. There's two different trains of thought with a risotto. Some people will say you've got to keep it stirring, you've got to move it all the time. And in a way, the risotto should be cooking all the time. It should be moving slightly all the time. But others say not to overstir, to break the grains, to keep the grains whole. So we're just going to let that gently simmer, give it a stir every few minutes.
Does that match then with having like a more drier, kind of solid, kind of paella style risotto, or more kind of wet risotto?
Absolutely. Again, there's different trains of thought there as well. For me, a risotto should be quite loose. It should find its own level in the bowl,
nice,
as opposed to standing upright. But if you're using the risotto as part of a wider dish, you might want to dry a risotto as well.
We talk about risottos. I mean, Risotto doesn't just have to be a main course. You could have this as a very small starter.
Absolutely. And you know, the way the Italians do eat, they do eat with that first course, which is always rice or pasta, and it's their filler course, but it's not a big portion.
Yeah.
You know, rice is very, very filling, and so is pasta as well. Right, okay. The rice is just about cooked, nearly 100% cooked now. There's a little bit of liquid in there, but I've got some additional stock should I need to let it down. The rice is cooked. It's at that point where it's still a little bit al dente. If you're ever unsure about how the rice should be cooked, just take a grain of rice and just squeeze it through your fingers, and there should be just a slight white speck in the middle. Okay. It shouldn't be translucent. Shouldn't just the grain shouldn't just burst into your fingers. That's right. So everything we do now takes place off the stove. Okay, we're going to finish the risotto with what we call a Manticotura. And what that involves is it involves homogenizing or emulsifying the liquids with the fat. Now the fat comes in the form of Parmigiano, plenty of, and butter. And again, don't be shy with the butter. This is the important part. And what we're looking for is the homogenization, that butter. You see the consistency changes.
It's got that nice shine to it.
That's right. And when you push it forward and pull it back, it should start creating a wave. And then you know you are at the right consistency.
Perfect.
So what we're going to do now, I do know it needs a little bit of seasoning, so a little bit of salt. Careful with salt though, if you're using a convenient stock is very salty, so be careful. A little bit of pepper.
Throughout the whole process.
Yeah, and you should be tasting throughout the whole process as well. And we're going to finish it with a little bit of chopped parsley as well. And we're just going to stir that through.
And that's all done with the residual heat. You've taken it off the pan.
It's off the heat now, yeah. And what we will do, we'll just stir that. If we have a look, is that the consistency we're after? It looks pretty good to me. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, it looks very good. You can still make out the rice. It's got a nice shine to it. It's got enough mushrooms running through it.
That's right. So we will check for flavour. We're almost there, Dave. We do need a little bit more salt, and I think you should just put extra parmesan in.
Just for safety.
Anyway,
just like, if you think you put enough in, put a bit more in.
So you can see nice consistency.
You always do it with your hand, because with a spoon now you'd just be breaking that rice up.
Those
and all
grains,
that hard work undone.
Absolutely, those grains would be breaking up. So with a ladle, thing is a risotto, when you spoon it into the bowl, it should just find its own level. You know, it shouldn't stand too firmly upright. Make sure you show the ingredients, get an even consistent layer of ingredients as well. And I think more cheese,
More cheese.
A little bit of parmesan on the top. And there we have it, a simple mushroom risotto.